I think we are just now about to start. So, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jarosław Ponder, and as a head of the ITU Office for Europe, it's my great pleasure to open today the first ever ITU Digital Youth Jam, organized by the Generation Connect Youth Group from Europe, the group of young, motivated leaders advocating for the digital for development. Before I give my opening remarks and warmly welcome you all, I would like to give the floor to the technical moderator to briefly explain how you can engage yourself today. I'm handing over to Luisa.
Thank you, Jarosław. My name is Luisa. I will be the technical moderator for this event. So before the start, I would like to give you some instructions on the Zoom platform and the meeting. This meeting is entirely remote, so the audience is kindly asked to keep their microphones switched off. The moderator of the session will address the speaker and will give you the floor when your turn comes. You may use the chat for any questions or comments. Please include your name and affiliation for making it easier for the organizers. Moderators will be monitoring, and any comment might be read out if time allows. When the floor is open to the audience, please raise your hand to request the floor. We kindly ask you to display your full name and affiliation if possible. Incomplete or suspicious information may cause you to be removed from the meeting room. The meeting is being recorded, and recording will be used for report writing and communication purposes. I remain available in the chat if you need any assistance. Thank you very much and have a pleasant event.
Great, thank you very much, Luisa, and thank you very much to you for this explanation, and warm welcome to you all who have taken the time to join us today for this important event. This event is a culmination of many months of work that the young people of the Generation Connect Europe Youth Group have been working towards. This is an entirely crowdsourced event generated by the young leaders. And their journey started in December 2020 with the first concrete outcome already in the 2021 January with the Youth Declaration, which we have presented to the member states in order to present the challenges of the young people and to be further forwarded to the World Telecommunication Development Conference, the major conference of the ITU, being the UN Agency for Digital, and more importantly, that it's also will be leading towards the Generation Connect Summit to be held back-to-back with the WTDC in June 2022. So those who still are not engaged, please engage now. There is still time. I'm confident that this group will not stop there, as their work will continue beyond events in supporting youth engagement in the ITU and the topic of digital. When I first started working with this group of engaged and active young people, I immediately understood that the future of digital is in safe hands. And they are not only interested in working with the ITU and to represent the young people of their countries, but also interested in to gain a deeper understanding of the various hot topics today and to engage themselves in these areas and provide their contribution. Throughout 2021, the Generation Connect Europe Youth Group engaged itself in various brainstorming sessions, and they represented the group in many speaking events, and they engaged with other youth groups. A clear example of their engagement is this conference itself, where the outcomes of today will be presented at the youth event of the Internet Governance Forums taking place on 5th December 2021 in Katowice in Poland. And they are fast moving and this incredible group. To open our event, I'm pleased also to invite the young leaders representing and making the change in the digital area. And the first whom I would like to invite is the ambassador Nele Loesk to deliver her message. And Eleanor Loesk is the ambassador at large for digital affairs at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Estonia. She is responsible for the development and coordination of digital diplomacy and for the global partnerships in the digital domain. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody, and good morning from snowy Tallinn. Unfortunately, I cannot show you the picture because due to technical issues, I was not able to log in the system, and hence also the delay. So I'm very sorry from my side, and how the saying goes that the shoemaker is always without the shoes, and it also applies for the digital area. But I'm really grateful for ITU for organizing this very important event, especially as digital technologies do concern everybody's life. But when I was preparing a little bit for the today's intervention, I remembered how I first had my first encounter with the computer. I was then 10 years old. And we had a program that in Estonian then was called Juku. And all I remember was that I didn't really enjoy it. I was trying to avoid that class, but as we could do funny drawings, so I did not leave the programming class, but continued it. And the second time I had this, I would say, let's say, exposure to technological innovation was in 1993. When the browser was opened, and I'm not sure whether any of you were born at this time yet, but basically this was a huge change in our universe as we could finally see what the internet had to offer. And I remember very clearly when I was then entering actually the first year in the university, and I was thinking like, oh, maybe I could do without it. But of course, the time has shown that technologies and digital technologies particularly are here to stay, and actually they touch every aspect of our life. We get electricity, we get water, we shop, we find our dates, and so on. Which also means that this topic is hugely important in our everyday life, and as my role also shows, it's becoming a hugely important global affair. So now the question, as also Jaroslav was at the beginning, inviting you all to be more active in this digital affair, and I was also thinking like how you actually can do that, or how actually young people can influence the policy making and the area that concerns them. And I do have to admit that I couldn't find really good practices except some activism by local municipalities or cities to influence local policy making and to influence policy making in school level through different committees and perhaps school councils. So I would say that even though we know that youth is important part and probably understand technologies than we do here with Jaroslav and many others who we are every day shaping these policies, we have actually quite a big room for development. And I am actually asking you, everybody also, if you have any ideas, to contact myself or the organizers of the event, because we are currently here in Estonia developing our digital foreign policy. And as Jaroslav kindly asked me to also think how I could involve youth, I'm actually glad that this came up because I never thought about it before. So I would like to actually end with this call to ask you to think of ways how you think or would like to be involved in the policy making around digital technologies, including digital diplomacy, and let's see whether we can find common ways to collaborate. So I would wish you a very good event, and I'm looking forward, at least in the future, to perhaps meeting you in person. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Ambassador. It's really great that you were able to join us this morning. Thank you very much for this inspiration, and also for designing the way forward for the proactive engagement of the youth, and your advocacy for the engagement of the youth, meaningful engagement in the youth in the policy making. And I think there is a lot of space where the young people can contribute for designing the future. So thank you very much. But now let me turn to our second special guest, the member of the Parliament of Romania, acting chairman of the IT Communications Commission within the Chamber of Deputies, Mr. Sabin Sarmas, but who is also designated chair of the ITU Plenipotentiary Conference to be held in Romania in 2022, who is also very strong advocate for the meaningful youth engagement. So I'm handing over to you, Excellency.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me here at the first Digital Youth Jam. As I was presented, I'm Sabin Sarmas, and I will join the discussion today as designated chairman of the ITU Plenipotentiary Conference 2022, which will be organized in Bucharest next year. I know that lately we all have been hearing a lot how we live unprecedented times and how the world as we know is changing. However, the truth is that the future has always been challenging even before the pandemic. Just for example, by looking at the SDGs, we can agree that we have a complicated agenda, objectives such as zero hunger, quality education, gender equality, responsible consumption, production, and sustainable cities and communities being very, very difficult to tackle. Nonetheless, the current technology advancement offer us the opportunities needed to match the complexity of the challenges we face today. But in order to achieve our targets for 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, firstly, we need to make sure that we connect the unconnected. This is an ambition which goes far beyond the access to connectivity. Connect the unconnected means providing the necessary education and the basic skills for everyone to use digital public services. It means reskilling and upskilling people with the proper digital competencies to keep up with the changes on the labor market. It also means creating a safe, a cyber secure online environment and making sure that certain vulnerabilities are not exploited anymore online. I believe that at this stage of the digital transformation process of our society, the youth are the most entitled to point out the challenges and the opportunities as well. I also believe that your efforts to deliver social change through innovative digital solutions will be the most valuable for the economy and for the environment and society in general. I know that you are the most digitalized generation and you'll continue to grow more and more connected and more digitalized. This is why maybe today is more important than ever to discover and to believe in the potential of technological progress we face all around the world. As a young politician, because I'm a politician as well, I noticed that in Romania, the benefits of digitalization weren't always obvious for everyone. Therefore, it was a topic quite low on the public agenda sometimes. In this context, as a member of the government, I set up the Authority for Digitalization of Romania, and immediately I asked for the help of young volunteers like you to help us build a strong institution, actually the centerpiece of the digital transformation at a national level. Even though it's still a young institution, the authority is managing many ambitious projects aiming at modernizing the public administration and providing high quality digital public services for our citizens. I know that, or besides this, I know that very well as a young adult, it's not always easy to make your voice heard. However, once again, technology comes to rescue. I recommend you to use all the platforms you have online or offline, including the ITU Generation Connect Europe Youth Group, to make yourself seen and heard. That being said, I just want to add something which I think is very important, that during the PP22, as a chairman, I will promote and support all the initiatives related to the 5 thematic priorities we included in the draft declaration of the Europe Youth Group, since I believe that they raise issues relevant for all the regions all around the world. Finally, just let me to congratulate you on the work you've done so far. I wish you to have a productive and fruitful discussion. And I'm looking forward to hearing the results next week at the Internet Governance Forum. So thank you very much and have a really productive conference.
Thank you very much, Excellency, for this insightful address. And really, it's a lot of inspiration for the young people taking a look at the different ITU platforms, how to contribute meaningfully. And I'm confident that the Plenipotentiary Conference is one of the platforms where in particular, Europe group will be actively observing, and whatever opportunities which come might be of the help. So today we will be looking at some very exciting sessions, such as youth in policymaking, conversations with young leaders and their journeys, what is the role of the youth groups in Europe, and we'll close with the work of the Generation Connect Europe and the declaration they have created together this year. Excellency and Excellencies, we would like to thank you very much for taking time to be with us on this important milestone of the work of this group. Now, without further delay, I would like to pass the floor to my colleague Victoria Sawicka for the next steps. And please stay with us still, because we would like to also take a group photography where we would be pleased to be also with you as Excellency. So I'm handing over to you, Victoria.
Thank you, Yaroslav. Good morning, everyone. So before we proceed, I would like our moderator, Luisa, to make us a nice group picture and ask you all to switch on your cameras just for a little moment. Luisa, please let us know when you're ready.
Yes, so I'll count to 3. When I take the pictures, I see more and more people. Right, I have. Okay, let's wait just 5-10 seconds. Okay. So I will count to 3. Everyone smiles. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I will put one more. Oh, good. Once again, 1, 2, 3. Beautiful. All right. Thank you, everyone. Again.
Thank you, Luisa. And again, welcome everyone to this first session of the ITU Digital Youth Jam, an event by the Generation Connect Europe Youth Group. I remember when the Generation Connect Europe members were discussing how they would like to start this event. And of course, the policy making was a very important item of our discussion. This is why it is my great pleasure to moderate this session today, focusing on how youth voices are included in the policy making process. Thank you for those who joined us in Zoom today. And for those who couldn't be with us in Zoom, we have a live stream in YouTube, and I can see that we have also people joining there. For those of you who are here with us in Zoom, please feel free to start writing your questions in the chat box, and I will monitor them throughout our discussion. And to begin with, I would like to present you our distinguished panelists. And I'm honored today to be joined by Her Excellency Valeria Ernan, Deputy Minister for Euro Integration and the Ministry of Digital Transformation Ukraine. She actually will join us in 10 minutes. And Bojana Visekulna, Advisor and Officer of the Prime Minister of Serbia for Culture, Creative Industry, Science and Tourism. Jurgis Vilkas, Chief Specialist of the Resources and Services Division at the Communications Regulatory Authority of the Republic of Lithuania. And Alvesa Dimjaha, Cybersecurity Associate at KPMG Norway and a PhD candidate at University College of London. Thank you everyone for taking your time and joining us today in this important panel. And I would like to start this panel by giving you the opportunity to share with us a little bit more about your journeys and your work. And Bojana, we will start with you. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you so much, Victoria, and thank you for, can you hear me? Is everything okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this panel. It is my honor to present the Office of the Prime Minister and the Government of Serbia. Do you want me to share my own path, how I entered policymaking? Okay, so I studied abroad. I completed my BA in International Relations in Vienna. And I returned to Serbia as sort of midway thinking, what else, what next should I do? So in the meantime, I enrolled a master's degree in ethics, and I started slowly working my way through the local market. So I joined one HR agency, and I started working as an HR assistant. So the person that was leading this agency was actually a very close friend to then the minister, Ana Brnabić, who is now the prime minister. So she called me up and she said, you know what, midway, this woman is amazing. She's putting a team of young people, people who studied abroad. Do you want to just, have a chat with her and see whether you want to be part of the team? So I was like, yeah, why not, And that's how I joined the Ministry for Public Administration and Local Self-Government. Having no idea that 3 months after that, I will be joining the Prime Minister's office, right? So that was quite a journey. Of course, we, in the first 3 months, we went through the whole process with her of writing her expose and defending me with the parliament. And ever since, I've been with her and with the team working on the areas that you said. So science, creative industries, some cultural projects, and a little bit of some projects in tourism that basically border creative industries, innovation, and science as well.
Thank you, Bojana. That's definitely a very interesting journey you had.
Thank you.
And Jurgis, what about you? The floor is yours.
Hi everyone, I'm Jurgis from Lithuania, and talking about my journey. It's quite funny, I would say. I studied public policy, that's my bachelor, and my master is project management. And I always wanted to work in public field. I mean, like a public servant. And but I started as a bartender in my bachelor year, and I didn't have any experience administrative work. And when I graduated from my BA studies, I saw that there's a competition to RRT for consumer protection position, and I applied for it, and there was a competition, and I was the only candidate. So I won that competition. I started working there, and I step by step reached the position that I am now. And basically, I'm giving advices on law projects and etc. Regarding the field that I am working in, its resources and services of electronic communications. I think that's all.
Thank you, Jurgis. That's also very interesting journey you had. And finally, Albessa, over to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Albessa Demiaha. I'm from North Macedonia. And the journey that brought me here was predominantly academic. I decided to specialize in information security when I went abroad to do my master's in London. I'm grateful I got a scholarship from my country to do that, and I was supported for that. And while I was studying in London, I discovered the field of cybersecurity, and I realized that it's not just technical, and there are many different fields that you can specialize within, and policymaking is definitely one of them. So I decided to focus on the human-centered side of security, sort of trying to make it more understandable for people, for younger generations, but even for older ones, and working predominantly with awareness and training and education. So alongside my master's, I went into the world of teaching. I was a teaching assistant for several years, and then I was also a lecturer of a course called Information Security Management at my university. So throughout that journey, I decided to specialize even further, and I started my PhD, which focuses on cybersecurity culture, understanding all the different important factors in organizations, which at the core has policy in it. So trying to essentially change cybersecurity policy so that it is easier for people to engage and easier for people to be secure at the end of the day. So currently I'm still finishing my PhD, but I've also shifted my career into industry recently, and I'm a consultant at KPMG, where we're working in very exciting projects with both the public sector and the private sector in trying to help our clients with complying with different policies, but also raising their awareness in cybersecurity.
Thank you, Alberta, and thank you all for sharing your insightful journeys. And we all have different paths, but I'm glad to say that we are all moving toward the same goal, which is great. So starting the first round of our discussion, I would like to ask you, Bojana, can you please share with us some of the strategies that the Prime Minister's office in Serbia is implementing to include youth in policymaking? So maybe could you share with us, as a young person in Serbia, how can I be involved in sharing my ideas regarding new policies, especially those related to digital? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Victoria. Well, the Prime Minister herself is very striving towards open dialogue, especially towards youth in Serbia and Serbian youth living abroad. So to illustrate this, for example, when we joined office 4 years ago, she was looking for Serbian people studying abroad or working abroad who would like to join her office, especially young people. So she posted this on Twitter, right? And then a couple of people responded. And then one guy who at the time worked at the World Bank, he was sort of, high ranked there and a graduate from Johns Hopkins. So she liked him. She invited him for an interview. And a couple of months later, he became her foreign policy advisor. He served as a foreign policy advisor for the next 3 years. So this is the kind of practice that she is trying to introduce into this sort of, traditional political arena that's usually kept for, older sort of more experienced people. She believes that young people bring this passion, and that it's really important to include fresh views in policymaking, especially around digital, because of course, young people are more familiar with that as we said in the opening speeches. So in Serbia, you do have these, traditional ways of influencing policymaking if you are outside of politics. So you have a lot of youth NGOs, and then you have one an NGO that brings all these youth NGOs together and then represents their voices to the government. This is like a representative group of NGO youth organizations. And you also have Office for Youth within the Ministry of Youth and Sports that's actually working directly with young people and hearing their voices and implementing them in the policymaking. So one thing I would like to share with you is that in 2019, we had Novi Sad, which is the second largest city in Serbia. It was European Capital of Youth. So within this year, we had a lot of projects that involved programs for youth, capacity building, programs that are directed at education, but also a lot of programs that discussed how young people can get more involved in the policymaking. So there are a couple of results that came out of this process. One result is that we are now working directly with these people on changing the law on youth. This is currently in the process, and the long-term goal is basically to have more youth involved in the policymaking, with having clear and more specific channels of their influence. And the second thing is that the Prime Minister started having these regular open dialogues with youth representatives. We've had 4 of these so far since 2019, and one is upcoming in Niš next month. So these are basically forums where these organizations select a couple of individuals and they directly one-on-one with the Prime Minister discuss things that are relevant for you. So, digital education, digital skills, health, employment, well-being, everything that you also signaled, that you sorted in your manifesto, right, of the Generation Connect. To end, I would like to also say 2 other things that we initiated in the last 4 years. One is an organization that's called Returning Point, and this organization is basically targeting highly skilled diaspora, which are, mostly younger generations, people who went to study abroad or after studying abroad stayed in diaspora to work there. And the idea is basically to establish connections with them, to motivate them to come back to Serbia and contribute to our society, but not necessarily to come back if they don't have opportunities to work in Serbia. So it's important to, bridge this gap and to sort of find a way to cooperate with them through different mentorships program and help, create a platform for them to influence policymaking in Serbia in order to create better environment for them to eventually come back. The second thing, so that's directed towards diaspora, so to say, highly skilled, mostly young. And then the second is something that we're working on right now, and that's the Talent Fund reform. Talent Fund is basically a national fund that's giving scholarships, both to domestic students and to students wanting to study abroad. Why we are doing this reform? Because we want to focus more on alumni network management, career guidance, mentorship programs, and employability of these people that are using the national scholarships, right? So we want to create this network and to open especially public service to them for different internships and employment, but also to try to make a link with the private sector and get more youth involved in the private sector, because employment is currently one of the major things. Unemployment rates among youth are definitely one of the major issues in Serbia.
Thank you very much, Bojana. I am happy to hear about these innovative approaches, and the Twitter campaign. It's quite impressive. And next question, Jurgis. It's a similar question for you in Lithuania. And how does the government engage youth in policy making? And as a young Lithuanian, how can I get engaged in making policy, especially when it comes to digital? Please.
So basically, the government engage youth in policy making through various programs and projects. Basically, you just need to be active as a citizen, find a community NGO or any program or project related to youth involvement in policy making, and you are in the process. And believe me, there are many organizations around Lithuania to be a part of. The only problem, in my opinion, would be that in Lithuania there's a lack of attention from youth to digital policy making. I mean, we do not have certain youth organizations or communities related to digital policy making questions. In a country as not as innovative as we are, I think youth should be more interested in the digital policy making process. And I think the other way you can engage in the policy making process as a young citizen, you can be a public servant like me. Just put every effort to be your field professional. And you can contribute to the policymaking process as an expert. Also, there is a problem that young people are not interested to work in the public sector for some reasons. And on the other hand, the public sector institutions are kind of afraid to accept young specialists because of their lack of experience. And yeah, during the working year, I am engaged in cooperating with many institutions, and I have heard such statements like we do not seek accept students for internship, as teaching requires a lot of resources, which does not pay off. But in my opinion, if you accept young student or young person to work for you and invest in them knowledge and time, pay off a lot. So so basically you can, as I said, you can engage through various programs, projects and communities and NGOs, and the same way I did become a public servant.
Thank you, Jurgis. I hope we will see more and more young people in the government of Lithuania. And the next question I have to Her Excellency Ms. Valeria Onan. You are very active on social media and always sharing the work you do in Ukraine there. We do not usually see a lot of leaders share so much insights from their daily life on socials like you do, and we really appreciate this. Appreciate the opportunity to get to know you better there in an, let's say, unfiltered way, as well as your work. Could you please share with us more what is your social media strategy, especially in engaging youth when it comes to policy?
Yeah, first of all, hi everyone. It's a big pleasure to be here with you today, even online. Well, I like to run my social networks and tell my subscribers about what I do every day. And I want to show that the work as deputy minister is not about sitting in an old dusted office signing incomprehensible papers as it sometimes might be imagined. The modern public service, as I and my colleagues from the ministry see it, is working with people with a large number of projects and constant movement. And it is interesting and compelling and very joyful. Sometimes in a fast pace of life, some events recede and then suddenly the social networks remind you of it, showing your own publication from a year ago. I like these moments and the fact that social networks work as some sort of a diary. And to tell the truth, every day I get lots of feedback on social networks, and it helps to look at myself and my work from different angle. I often share comments I receive about our projects with my team, and this leads to whole new brainstorms, sometimes new ideas and solutions for improvement. I would take this opportunity to say that I'm very grateful to my audience for unexpected insights that come from social networks. In general, I am glad if young people, having come to my page and seeing my lifestyle, decide to choose a career in the civil service and focus their attention and energy on the development of the governmental projects of their own country.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and a special thank you for changing the perception on what it means to work in the ministry. And now, Albessa, my next question is for you. Your work on cybersecurity is very interesting, especially as more and more governments are looking to ensure that all the digital services are safe. From your point of view, and given your experience both in North Macedonia and Norway, what do you think can be the biggest cyber risks for governments involving their young constituents in a policy making online?
Thank you, Victoria. Well, I think we're living in very exciting times when it comes to cybersecurity. Perhaps mostly for us working in the field, as governments and other organizations are facing serious cyber threats on a daily basis. If we go back 10 years ago, most people did not know what cybersecurity was, whereas today we have governments and corporations, big corporations, being hacked regularly. So the impact of such intrusions is obviously colossal, and organizations often have to pay millions solely to recover from these incidents, in addition to the reputational damage that they have to face after these attacks. So in such situations, we must also consider the privacy and its implications on the rights of our citizens. So for example, when the Norwegian government was hacked a while ago, people considered it an attack on democracy. And in this complex threat landscape, it's imperative to follow a proactive rather than a reactive approach to security, meaning that we need to take steps before something bad happens rather than trying to fix them once it has already happened. So policymaking in cybersecurity requires a holistic approach. It is no longer sufficient to only invest in technology. We need to invest in people as well. And given how new cybersecurity is as a field, we are actually lucky that the majority of the experts in the field are relatively young. So as a result, their involvement in policymaking is crucial. And similarly to the COVID-19 pandemic, cybersecurity is a global challenge, and we need cross-border initiatives to tackle this challenge. So these initiatives have been a little bit difficult to facilitate during the pandemic, as we know, and many countries have had to be flexible and creative in the way that they've been working. So, for example, some governments have had to meet on Zoom and take very important decisions on Zoom by raising their hands on the webcam. And while online decision-making and policy-making is a promising platform, especially for younger generations, because we are more used to it, it is still in its early stages. So with that, obviously there come some risks, as most online collaboration tools, they are not really developed with security in mind. So they are associated with certain cyber risks, such as the lack of regulation in digital services, as opposed to physical meetings, which we have been doing for such a long time, and we know how to regulate them. Then there's the possibility of intruders joining confidential meetings, and this is a little bit difficult to control, as you know, with Zoom as well. And finally, a really important one is the potential data breach that can happen with these online decision makings. So with that said, young people have a twofold role in tackling this challenge. The first one is to actually try and work towards securing digital services and digital platforms in order to enable online policy making, as well as being at the forefront of such digital policy making.
Thank you, Albesa. I am looking in the chat box to see if we have any questions from audience. And we actually do have one. It goes to Bojana. So is the Serbian government implementing projects to boost the digitalization and the access to information and communication technologies of the youngest segments of the population? Please, Bojana, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the question. Well, digitalization and education are two priorities of the Prime Minister. So, of course, there are a lot of projects that we're working on. 4 years ago, we established this Office for IT and e-government. And the sole role of the office is basically to serve as an implementing body of all digitalization across public service. So basically, we started introducing e-services not only for citizens, but also for the industry. In terms of education, we've introduced a couple of projects and initiatives that basically directly target youth. So we introduced coding as a mandatory subject in the elementary school. So 5th, 6th, 8th, 7th, and 8th grade. So these kids now, as a mandatory subject, learn, Python, Scratch, all these programming languages. And IT is already a mandatory subject in gymnasiums, right, in high schools. So that was really innovative. I think we are the kind of a leader in that area in Europe. So, and then at the high school level, but also at the elementary level, we went fully digital. So we have digital textbooks. Elementary schools are already fully digital, and then high schools are becoming fully digital next year. So that's, again, directed at increasing digital literacy and skills and so forth of youth. as an end result to have them more involved in the policy making, of course, and to use these digital skills for their own well-being. And then at the university level, we've introduced two master programs that were especially crafted with the industry. One was in IT, and the other one was in gaming and visual effects. So the idea was to have a completely new curriculum that will have 50% of it teaching and 50% mandatory work in the industry. So at the beginning of the program, universities already had, agreed positions for these students in designated companies for them to work at. So that's how we try to bridge this gap between, university education and work in the industry, which is usually recognized as the major problem, that what you learn in the university, you're not actually ready to enter the labor market. So these are, let's say, some of the things we were working on. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you. It's very interesting. We have one more question here. I think by mistake it came directly to me, but I will read it. So, are there any steps that the government is taking for encouraging, supporting, and leading young entrepreneurs? Maybe Your Excellency, would you like to take this question and tell us how Ukraine, what Ukraine is doing to lead young entrepreneurs?
Sure. Great question, by the way. Well, we have a national project on the development of SMEs, which is called GC-EUR Business. So this project has two components. The first one is an online one-stop shop for future and existing entrepreneurs with lots of different free services and products. For example, now every Ukrainian entrepreneur could get a free consultation in different directions, starting from how to start my business, how do I create a financial plan, how do I create marketing strategy, how to internationalize my business, how to choose the country for export, and so on. Plus, there is a free online school for entrepreneurs, plus the catalog of business ideas, the map of infrastructure, marketplace of financial products with smart filters, impact investment platform where entrepreneurs could get investment and vice versa, the big section on analytics of of the state of Ukrainian entrepreneurship, and lots and lots of other sections. This is a live organism, so the web portal updates regularly, once in 3 months, and it is really very useful for those who want to start their business or who want to grow their businesses. We have more than 1.5 million users of the portal for the last year. And the second component of this project is the network of offline hubs, GC-EUR Business. Actually, those hubs are centers of support for entrepreneurs. So everyone who would like to know more about the topic of entrepreneurship can come and get a consultation for free offline if he's not comfortable in consultations online in online format. Also visit some educational initiatives, long-term and short-term programs. Also, there is a possibility to test your product before selling it into retail networks. So, for example, let's imagine you're manufacturing honey and you want to sell your product, but still you have some concerns regarding this product, maybe the quality, branding, or pricing, or whatever. So you can come to any of these centers and put your product on the shelf and give the list of the questions to the center. So they will be transmitted into a special program, and near this location, near this pop-up zone, there is an iPad. So all of the guests of this center, they can come and see all the products and they can answer all of the questions. And an entrepreneur can see the answers on a real-time basis. So actually those answers help a lot to improve the product. And there are lots and lots of different opportunities. And of course, we are also paying a lot of attention to the educational topics. So we have a special product, which is entrepreneurship for scholars, and which is implemented into high school, and entrepreneurial university, which is also a special discipline. Available in already 80 universities in Ukraine.
Thank you very much for sharing with us this, I would say, very progressive and innovative approach Ukraine is taking in supporting young entrepreneurs. We have a few more questions, and I think this one goes to Jurgis. What are the main actions the Lithuanian government is taking in the field of electronic communications regulation, and how do these actions involve and affect youth? Please, Jurgis, the floor is yours.
Yep. Thank you for your question. So basically, the main action now is we adapted the electronic communication law by on December 1st, and basically we need to adapt all the bylaws, and this is our job, and we are preparing these bylaws by now. And how this action evolve and affect youth, I don't know how to answer this question, but I would try to do it in my opinion. So basically, in my opinion, we are seeking that everyone in Lithuania would have 100 megabits per second internet speed. So basically, directly this will result in better education for young people, especially in nowadays. And now we have coverage of 30 megabits per second, 89% of Lithuanian population. So basically, from our perspective, the minimum requirements for the speed, for the education, and etc. would be 10 megabits per second, but we have it bigger, so we are very happy about it. And also maybe off topic, if you would have a better internet connection, the news and the information about our digital policy will reach youth more fast, and they would be more interesting to engage and to share their opinions or concerns about it. So that's all I can say, I think.
Thank you. That's definitely a positive effect, I would say. And we have one more question. It goes to Albesa. Regarding your experience in cybersecurity, what are the main actions that can be taken to achieve a behavior change in information security policy, and how can youth be part of that change? Please, Albesa.
Thank you for the great question. So a message that I've been trying to get across for years is that the first step in cybersecurity is to understand that people are not the enemy and they should not be treated as the weakest link. Rather, they should be helped in order to have this behavior change. So the first step is to understand that awareness is only the first phase of behavior change. Education and training and all of that is very important, of course, but it's only the first step in a behavior change program. So behavior change takes time. It takes buy-in from managers, from seniors. So everybody needs to be on board, not just people below. And it also takes a lot of sort of creativity, engagement, and being proactive with security. So it's not just a tick box. It needs to be a long-term program. It needs to be a year-round engagement. And in terms of how youth can be a part of it, I think this is a twofold strategy. First of all, it's a country's responsibility to include youth in the national strategy. And at least North Macedonia and Norway have done that. So they've included the sort of development of curricula and the development of awareness and training programs for schools and children at a very young age, up to university level. So I think that's a really good first step. And then the second step is from the youth themselves. And as I said, we're lucky that a lot of young people are in security, and it's a young field in general. So what we can do to involve ourselves is try to become subject matter experts, and that is our way into policy change. So the more specialized it will become in cybersecurity, and believe me, there's a shortage of that, the more we will be asked to get involved, regardless of our age. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvesa. That's a very good message, I would say. And we have one more question regarding how we link government and young leaders, how we can connect them, and how the link between them can work to produce more impact, I assume. Maybe Your Excellency, would you like to take this question?
Yes, sure. Thank you for the question. And by the way, it's so an interesting discussion. So, well, I would say that never think that policymaking is something very far from you or unattainable in the career sense. Anything is possible if you make enough effort and understand your goal. Today, the digital, I would say even, yeah, the internet generally provides many opportunities to follow the projects of public organizations, current political and social figures. And it is important to be aware of what is happening around you and not to hesitate to try your hand at your dream business. Look for opportunities and act. That's what I say.
Thank you very much. I have actually a few more question rounds prepared for you, but I see that we're running out of time. So maybe we would go to the last round. And first of all, I would like to thank everyone for sharing these insights. I still encourage the audience to ask their questions because we still have a few minutes. And meanwhile, our final question to all our speakers would be, what is the message that you would give to young people today in engaging more in a policy making, especially when using digital, and what could be some of the risks or things to look out for? And Bojana, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I think that two areas that I would advise young people to focus on are environment and ethics. Why these two? Because I think the decisions that we make today will have long-term impact on these two areas, and they will basically shape the future for these young people, right? And some of these decisions could be reversible. When I say ethics, I mean especially digital and especially AI, right? This is something that cybersecurity, of course, but even looking beyond that, like fairness, correcting for bias in AI and so forth. This is something that's not being addressed enough, I think, globally. And I think young people having, more experience with these advanced technologies can actually lead the change in this area and can set a different example to create their own future. So I think these are two basically areas that are really important for the young people to focus on. In terms of advice, from my own experience, I think there are two main challenges when you enter, I will speak from my own perspective. So when you enter politics, right? So when you are at the center of it. One is that as a young person freshly out of university, you are usually driven by an ideology, whatever that be, right? So you always try to, get to this ideal kind of state that you have had a chance to study at university, and it's like a perfect world, right? So once you enter politics, you have to understand that ideology serves an aspiration. It's a state that you aspire to get to, but in making decisions, you have to be very pragmatic. So I would say that you keep, ideology as an aspirational path, but then a guiding principle should be pragmatism. Politics is always about a compromise, and it's actually that journey towards that kind of ideal state that you usually never reach, unfortunately. And then the second thing is, I think that young people should set an example for older politicians in using digital tools for open dialogue. And when I say dialogue, I really mean dialogue. I think that digital tools have helped us with more, have introduced this more direct and instant communication. We have so many channels of communication that it seems like that process has become more democratic and more open. But on the other hand, digital tools have also created this gap between the messenger and the message. And that has had some negative effects, right? So you have these Twitter wars, you have people just, saying out loud their thoughts without really thinking through what that means and what kind of impact that can have on the public dialogue. So I think young people should really, really focus on getting these digital communication tools in order and setting an example of really open democratic dialogue at every level.
Thank you so much, Bojana, for your insightful, very inspiring message. And Jurgis, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So my message would be, first of all, don't be afraid. Bojana mentioned the dialogue. I also wanted to mention the dialogue between the policymakers and the youth and all the citizens. I think the institutions should be prepared to work with youth organizations and communities, consider these suggestions and answer any questions or concerns they may have. Such dialogue gives young people the opportunity to be directly involved in the policy making. And my advice for young people would be do not be afraid to reach out the institutions when making proposals or raising an issue. It is important, which is important to them, and that one sentence, what if not us, and when if not today. So basically, we had a situation in Lithuania where the parliament members during the COVID came to parliament to work there because they didn't know how to work from home. So I think the place is yours. Just do the move and keep going forward.
Thank you, Jurgis. This is very encouraging. And Alberta, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And yeah, I agree with Jurgis. We shouldn't be afraid. We should speak up. And the fact that we're young should definitely not stop us if we have the right thinking and the right expertise. But from a cyber perspective, I think the most important message that I have for young people is to let go of the stereotypes that are associated with cybersecurity. So there are several misconceptions about the field. One, that it is a purely technical field, and I myself am an example of the opposite. The second one is that it's not an appropriate or welcoming field for women. Again, here I am trying to demonstrate the opposite. And three, that people working in cybersecurity are stuck behind a computer and not out in the real world. So I want to emphasize that there's a lot of diversity in cybersecurity, and there are numerous disciplines waiting to be developed and waiting for these young people to get involved. So cybersecurity is young, but it is fast growing, and it will soon become the cornerstone in all policymaking, whether that is about sustainability or, as Bojana was mentioning, the ethics of algorithms and all of that. So I will leave you with this question. Who better to lead the future of cyber policymaking than the young people who grew up alongside the field itself?
Thank you very much, Alvesta, for destroying the stereotypes in your message, and with your work, the most important. Your Excellency, please, the floor is yours for your final message. I think there are some connectivity issues that Ms. Anand has, and unfortunately we lost her. But still, I would like to thank all our distinguished guests for this amazing conversation, for your openness in sharing your experience, your journey, and your insights. And of course, special thanks for this encouraging and inspiring messages for our young audience. And thanks to all our participants for being with us today. And I invite you to stay for our second session. And our second session is a fireside chat with a young entrepreneur. And I would like to invite the moderator, Luke Cavanaugh, to present our speaker and to give you more details on the session. Please, Luke, the floor is yours. I see that Luke is with us. Let us just give it a second. So, Luke, are you here?
I see that his microphone is unmuted and camera, but we can't hear you. So.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Great. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, fantastic. Well, I was just saying while I was in my muted phase that it was really inspiring to catch the last 5 minutes of that conversation. And I think a lot of the themes that conversation just ended on are things that I'd like to pick up over the next 45 minutes that we've got to spend with Taha Bawa, who is an amazing guest, and we're so privileged to have him join us today. And what I'm going to do is briefly introduce him, to get into a conversation with him for about half an hour, and then try and leave 15 minutes for questions from the audience as well. I'm sure there'll be a lot. And the focus of this session is shifting gear away from cybersecurity slightly and more into the space of youth entrepreneurship, and particularly digital entrepreneurship. And Taha is the founder and CEO of Goodwill. And Goodwill is a next generation community for students and young professionals to connect to opportunities that fast track their future. So Goodwill works across 150 different countries and is a space that offers young people a new way to discover earning and learning opportunities by forming connections with each other. So in many ways it encapsulates the mission of the Digital Youth Jam today and the ITU Generation Connect project more broadly. Taha has always also been named on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list. He's a World Economic Forum Global Shaper, and he's been a speaker on education and innovation at TEDx, in the United Nations, Google Business Talks, MIT, Oxford, and many other places as well. So obviously someone who has a lot of great thoughts to share with us today. And Taha, if you're on the line, which I think you are, perfect. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Luke, and thank you so much for the kind words. Not sure if they're all deserved, but really grateful to be here with you today.
Fantastic. So what I'd like to do is pick up on the conversation that you guys just left off in the first panel. And I was hearing a lot of things such as not being afraid to reach for business ideas and seizing the moment. And Taha, I wanted to start by coming back to a conversation that you had on a podcast with Guy Raz about a year ago. And that was How I Built This Podcast, where you're talking about resilience and the pandemic. And one of the things that you said then was that it was never easier to start a new business as a young person, and now was the sort of time in the pandemic to seize the moment and go ahead and be an entrepreneur. Do you think that 1 year on your view has changed on this at all, or do you think it's still fertile ground for young people to be entrepreneurs? And if so, why is this the case?
Yeah, thanks so much, Luke. I should avoid making super general statements like that in the future. I think maybe at a holistic, if we really talk at a holistic level, that is likely to be true. Of course, we're making huge generalizations when speaking about this. I think the reason why I said that was largely because the costs of entry to starting a business today are significantly lower in some cases than have ever been before. Yes, there's more competition, but the world is arguably flatter. I was talking about and looking at some of the youth that we work with. You can start a drop shipping business, out of Egypt. You can do that out of Kenya because of access to digital platforms, because of access to clients around the world that maybe was not the case before. That's on the one hand. Building an organization or a company like Goodwill, for example, is a lot cheaper now than it was maybe 10 years ago. So building a digital company, that can be because the way servers work, that can be because it takes a few minutes to buy a domain website. This has just become so much more mature than what was 10, 15 years ago. In terms of the economy, so the pandemic has definitely destroyed a lot, but has also opened up a lot of opportunities. And similar to post-2008, there was a huge surge in startup activity. People wanted to reinvent the financial industry. And I think we have an opportunity to rethink how we work, rethink how we educate ourselves, because digital transformation has just accelerated by multiple, by years, trends that we'd seen previously. So I think there's a lot of opportunity on that front. Having said that, there's still the challenges that youth face in terms of confidence. There's still the challenges that youth face in terms of safety net. There's still the challenges that they face in terms of exposure. Having said that, just on the exposure piece, I think that's also something that's quite interesting for this generation compared to the last one. Entrepreneurship is almost mainstream now for a lot of people. It's not for everyone. And there are a lot of people who are not there, but the idea of becoming an entrepreneur is something that we talk about a lot more than we did 10, 15 years ago. And I think that's a benefit, right? So I was kind of inspired to take on this journey, not inspired, but rather shown or exposed to it by watching Shark Tank and Dragon's Den when I was in school. And just listening a little bit and criticizing other people's businesses, while watching TV. That was my way of trying to understand, okay, this is how you do this is how you pitch and the rest. And I think that is just so much more normal now because there's just so much more exposure to that than it was before. Having said that, there's still lots of challenges. So I don't want to make it sound like it's easy by any means. And I do want to say, sorry for just keep going on. I do want to say when I talk about entrepreneurship, I don't mean building a business with 100 employees and raising tens of millions of dollars. I mean, there's so much opportunity, and I would love to talk about that perhaps just in a bit about the micro entrepreneurship that exists, the entrepreneurs that are for example, in sub-Saharan Africa that are doing side hustles, but are actually entrepreneurs. They might be just reselling something, buying something, and that's entrepreneurship as well. And I think we need to show a lot of respect and encouragement towards that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so much interesting stuff there, but I think one of the things that you pick out really well is this point of exposure. And I guess slightly different for me. I was always more the apprentice than Dragon's Den, but point taken very much so. And I think that this idea of being exposed to entrepreneurship is a really interesting one, because I think, at least from my childhood growing up, it was still reinforced to me by watching those shows that people who are entrepreneurs are men and women in suits and blazers. And it sounds like the point you're trying to make is that that's not always true. And I guess one of the challenges that we might have with young people is converting that exposure to like the world of business and being more familiar with it to realizing that it's something that they can go into themselves. I mean, how do you think you'd lower that sort of barrier of expectation that we might call it, to address entrepreneurship as something that can be a lot more casual than that?
I think it's that's a really good point, and I think it's about having role models that youth can associate with. There's some people, maybe you, Luke, that you watch The Apprentice or Dragon's Den, you're like, yeah, that could be me. But for many people, that's just not possible. In fact, it's actually it dissuades them more than anything else. And if I take the example of a micro entrepreneur, it's not Elon Musk that's going to, and no disrespect to Elon Musk, but it's not Elon Musk that's going to inspire them to become an entrepreneur. If I take a concrete example with what we're watching, what we're doing, we get local role models. And when I say local, I'm talking about someone from rural Kenya, for example, get them to speak about their journey as an entrepreneur and their entrepreneurial journey. And that is something that can inspire the local context, right? And we need to do this globally. And this is something we're working on right now globally. Another example would be if we take, you know, the ecopreneurs or the agripreneurs that we're trying to foster in a lot of the global south. There again, it's not necessarily someone like myself who's built a digital company that should be speaking and inspiring, but it's people from the ground who might be a few years ahead of them, or a little bit more than a few years ahead of them, but they can really relate to. So role modeling is probably the most authentic and scalable way of encouraging people, because again, it has to be locally contextualized and it has to be authentic. So if we think of this generation, authenticity goes a long way. You know, highly well-produced productions are not necessarily the thing that's going to inspire someone to make that shift, because it's not something they can relate to. And of course, this is even more, and then if we add the gender divide, this is disproportionately negatively affecting, of course, women and other underrepresented or vulnerable communities. So we really need local mentors. And the way we're doing that is by running global and local competitions alongside various partners from the for-profit, non-for-profit, and governmental sectors to be able to provide role models, but also the ability to engage in very small, low implications or low barriers to entry ways. So just to give you a concrete example, we run challenges where we ask youth in the beginning to identify a problem. So we have role models that will speak about their journeys, how to pitch, etc. Then we ask youth to identify a problem they see around them. Then we ask them to participate in a few sessions and content that it's really just 60-second to 2-minute videos. And then they're asked to pitch their idea that they may have. And that pitch can lead to a unconditional grant of $1,000 or $500, which allows them to just go for it. And if it turns out to be great, fantastic. And then we connect them to accelerators. But if it doesn't, their success of having received something which is well publicized amongst the community encourages other people that a normal 18, 19, 20-year-old can do something and can get recognized for it. Even if they fail, because we have to remember, we have to normalize failure, right? Like that's critical.
Yeah, I mean, that was exactly the point that I think I was going to follow up with. It sounds like there's a lot going on in your mind between these sort of lowering barriers of entries and the opportunities that failure provides. Do you think that your own personal attitude to failure has changed over the years? Do you think that it's something that's changed as your company's grown and you've failed lots and lots of times? I mean, where is your mind at with the concept of failure itself, and how has that changed over sort of the past 5, 6, 7 years?
Really good. That's a really good question. I think so. With just before talking about my own experience with it, I think if we are to allow youth or anybody really to succeed entrepreneurially, we have to accept failure. So for us, when we look at those grants that we're giving out, we basically expect them not to succeed. The point is, it's unlikely that your first business as a youth is going to lead to success. It's just unlikely probabilistically. That's totally fine. Start it young, go for it, fail, that's okay. The next one, or don't even start. You might have an idea and then you drop out of the idea. Totally fine. You're likely to actually only start a business a few years later. I mean, if I look at myself, theoretically, I think the first registered company I had was, I was maybe, I can't remember, maybe 20, but I must have tried the first, the first ideas we had when we were 16. But between 16, we launched a website and did some other things, but the only first registered company happened at 20. So the same thing applies for the youth that are sharing ideas. It can take years, and it might not even be in their 20s. It might happen when they're 30 or beyond, which means that, does that count as a failure? No, that education in terms of that entrepreneurial mindset is essential when you think of policy, when you think about joining NGOs, when you think about joining large companies, or whether it be a small, medium business, before they make the step to basically start their own. And I would just say that I started businesses, but I also followed. So I followed my brother into starting Goodwill. And I think there's this TEDx that I really like, which is like how to start a movement. I think we can't undermine and undervalue how important it is to be a follower. And I think sometimes with this whole hero worshipping of perceived leaders, we forget about actually the only reason why I'm on this call is because there's 60 other amazing people that are doing a great job, and as a result, I get sometimes invited to certain things. So it's really not the entrepreneur per se. It's that mindset which is so critical, which will allow a youth to maybe join a company which has 5 people, join an NGO which has 10 people, or maybe change a large organization that has 10,000 or 100,000 employees. That's going to be critical for us as a society, and I think for youth in particular. So that's like more generally, if I think of myself, I'm trying my best not to be afraid of failure. I think I'm always paranoid about failure, like every single day. But at the same time, I clearly have shown that I can take calculated risks. I think all the decisions I've made have been very much aware. I wouldn't say naive, because very much aware of the risks that are at stake, but they are calculated and risk adjusted. I think it's, afterwards it's everyone's personal consideration. I hope it doesn't change though, because it's easy. It's easy for us to, you see failure so much. It's easy for us to become afraid of it, but we can't afford that.
Yeah. I think if anyone hasn't seen the TED Talk that Taha just recommended, it's a great excuse to throw out really poor dance moves in whatever situation you find yourself. But no, seriously worth a watch. And I think you make a really good point about sometimes that the first follower and the followers that come after that are just important as the leader. I want to come back in a minute to your relationship with your brother and how that's influenced your sort of story as an entrepreneur. But I just wanted to push and talk a little bit more about what you're saying about the grants and the sort of support that you've provided, or you've seen other people provide for young entrepreneurs to help them fail more easily. How do you think that could be scaled up to an institutional level? And how do you think organizations like the ITU or the United Nations more generally, or any private sector organizations, private sector equivalents, can support young entrepreneurs better?
Yeah, I think, thank you, Luke. I think if I understand the question correctly, I think it's not necessarily always about reinventing things. It's about partnering, because there's no one organization, despite the strength of some that you mentioned. There's not one organization that can do this alone. So our approach has been very much twofold. One is we leverage technology to reduce the costs of delivery. And number two, we leverage partners. And we have, in terms of partnerships, we have partners that we work with for reach. So local context, global context. Our own network serves approximately 2 million youth, or has access to, serves 2 million youth. And then via our partners, we have access to over 10 million youth around the world. And then we work with local partners in the event, for example, that there's some underprivileged communities that are either youth on the move or youth that come from areas with low digital penetration or can't afford a smartphone of their own. Then we work with local organizations who actually provide spaces and support. So that's an example of partnering for reach. Then we partner for competencies. So again, if we talk about contextualizing, it's great to have, that we work with a lot of the large organizations, the UNICEFs and the others, who have global reach, but also have local offices, which are critical for us to be able to contextualize what does it mean to be an entrepreneur between Bolivia or in Kenya again, or Switzerland for that matter. So that's the other piece. So again, working with subject matter experts. For now, for example, we're working with one of the leading organizations in the fight against climate change to really tailor our programs and our entrepreneurial challenges to be climate resilient focus, right? Or to drive up biodiversity. So we work with subject matter experts that we don't have in-house to be able to do that. And then the final one is funding. Our approach to funding has been, so we participate in it. We have other partners that kind of already seed fund it. So we're bringing in other organizations to come on top and complement. So the idea is an organization financially can have, for the same dollar that is put in or Swiss franc that's put in, can have maybe 10x the return it would have if it went in alone. That's been our approach. And concretely, most recently, like literally last week, we had an organization that just gave a significant amount of money, but 100% of it went straight to the youth because all the programs had already been paid for. and financed. So we didn't even, I mean, even transaction costs were paid for. So they literally 100% went straight to the youth in the form of microgrants, which would normally cost quite a lot. But in their case, they just built on top. And then they still get the comms and the recognition and all of that good stuff, because it's economies of scale.
Yeah, that's all incredibly interesting. I know you've spoken a couple of times about local partners and that sort of thing. And I guess that's the bread and butter of Goodwill, right? And it's really interesting. And one thing that I wanted to shift the conversation to slightly is thinking a little bit about how that partnership works on an individual level. So the reason that I brought up your reference to your brother, who's obviously your co-founder at Goodwill, is because I think there's a lot to be said for sort of peer mentorship and peer coaching and that sort of thing. How important do you think peer mentorship or peer coaching or peer development is, particularly for young people these days, as opposed to sort of having a formal mentorship by someone a lot older than them who's sort of been there and done that, as it were?
Yeah, in terms of the peer mentorship, I think it's been our approach. So our whole pitch has been peer mentorship is actually one of the most effective ways of learning, whether that be entrepreneurial or otherwise. And I think it comes back down to knowing that someone else is in the same shoes as you. And it doesn't mean necessarily peer mentorship from someone in the same class. It can be peer mentorship from someone from the other side of the world, which is something we've seen. So we've had peer mentorship for youth that happens literally between someone in India and someone in the US, and they go on this journey together. So definitely totally align on that. And then in terms of the context of my brother, yes, 100%. So we've been, the ability to bounce ideas off each other, to be able to have that emotional support is just as important as having someone with 35 years of experience. I do have the privilege of having older mentors, and I think that's also important, or not say older is not the right word. It's more, let's say, mentors with different experiences, I'd say, because it doesn't, again, I don't think age really matters. I could have a 19-year-old that is much more experienced than me in so many other ways. That would be an incredible mentor to me. But I think it's about different, mixing up, let's say, a peer and having that diversity of experiences.
Fantastic. That sounds great. And I know, I imagine most people on this call have benefited from the perfect mix of both. Some more experienced mentors and some peer mentors who are really the people that, when it comes down to it, will be driving you, having been in similar shoes, in some cases co-founding it with you. And I guess one of the unique things when it comes to all these partnerships that you've talked about, these mentor relationships and these business partners in the context of Goodwill, is that it's happening across the world. And this is something that's been facilitated a lot more easily since the start of the pandemic. Do you think there's still barriers that exist, whether that be culturally or from in terms of entrepreneurial communities, that prevent those relationships being formed between young people? Or do you think we're now so sort of ingrained in the virtual world that we can form a mentorship relationship with someone from Europe and someone from Africa, for example, despite the sort of slightly different approaches to micro entrepreneurship and that sort of thing that you talked about?
Yeah, I think within the context of mentorship, yes, I think it can happen virtually, really. When it comes to the other sorts of relationships that are needed when it comes to, let's say, entrepreneurship in general, or global entrepreneurship, it's tough because meeting in person, of course, allows us to bring down some barriers. It allows us to bring up some trust. I still believe that is to be the case. I see that in some of the partnerships we have. Yes, we were lucky to have some partners, very, very strategic ones that I've never met, literally never met. And that's fine, but it works because there is maybe, very close cultural understanding, right? Or an ability to speak cross-culturally, which is just not the case for many young people who just haven't had the exposure to it previously. So I think it's again, for youth, meeting in person is a way of kind of reducing the barriers to entry in terms of the cross-cultural engagement. But then we just have to remember, regardless whether they meet in person or not, the big challenge, and I would say one of the big challenges and inequalities that exist in entrepreneurship, but the same applies to, applying to one of the international organizations, is youth who are not from a similar cultural background as is the norm and cannot speak and use the same buzzwords that are going around are greatly are at a great disadvantage, because we have a bias, both subconscious and not subconscious. If we think just, some of the challenges, think about the entry requirements to some of the large international organizations. They greatly favor people from a certain background, because one has to be able to afford to be able to go through X years of education. One has to be able to speak a certain amount of language. The list goes on and on, without going into too much detail. And the same thing can be applied in the entrepreneurship world. If you think about what is required to speak to an investor, what is required to speak to certain partners, subconsciously we are still leveraging past experiences to decide sometimes, again, I don't want to generalize, but sometimes to decide the credibility of an individual in front of us. And if all our life, we went to a certain university background, we went to, we speak and engage with certain people socially, there is a subconscious trust and belief that this is the highest probability to success. So I give an example. If you went to a well-reputed university, and then all of a sudden you're like, actually, I'm going to invest in a youth who comes from sub-Saharan Africa that, I may not have, I've never met someone from there before. Now, all of a sudden, am I going to put down $10 million? I don't know. But for me, if I know someone who went to the same university as me, I know that I think I'm great. So maybe I'll put down $10 million for that person. This is the sort of subconscious biases that exist, but sometimes conscious biases that exist as well, which make it very hard for certain youth. And we need to break down those barriers.
I completely agree. I think that what we've talked a lot about over the past half an hour already is the fact that barriers to entry are lowering, but actually that does seem to be happening quite an inequitable way. And I think one of the challenges that I've heard discussed at ITU events before, and we've been working with as a global visionary board and also Europe Youth Group, is like how we achieve that, not just in the entrepreneurship space, but you make the good point about international organizations as well, and how that feeds into policy too. I think that's a conversation that I'd love to pick up on if we get time again. I think what I wanted to do is leave ample time for questions, because I've seen a couple have come in, and just ask one more of my own. We've talked a lot about failure over the past 25, 30 minutes, but I wanted to finish on sort of a note of success, and particularly think about a lot of the things we've talked about in terms of entrepreneurs that don't necessarily fit the mold. And one thing that I've heard a few people talk about recently is whether we're quantifying success in the right way when it comes to entrepreneurs, and whether sort of financial profitability and that sort of thing should be the key indicator of success. So what do you think should be the key indicators of success in potentially taking your own firm as an example? Like, how do you quantify success, and how do we move away, if necessary, from a really strong focus on just the financial top and bottom line?
I think that's a really great point, and we could have an entire conversation about that. Again, it's nuanced and there are differences, so I can't generalize, because the success, what I think we need to start off with is that the success for one company or organization may be very different to another's and should be quantified differently. Both can be successful in completely different ways. So traditionally, you'd say, okay, shareholder value, so that means the share price, whether it be private or public, and that is determined by revenue, a profit, et cetera, et cetera. That may be important for certain companies and organizations, but if I think of myself and many others, not maybe ourselves, yes, it's important to have that, but you also have the societal impact, the positive externality, and this is for a certain type of organization. Having a positive societal impact, significant positive externality is critical. If I think of others, if I think back to the micro entrepreneur, which again should be just as important, and someone who literally he or she has 1 or 2 employees, this or 0 employees, it's not about the total sum of revenue, or it's not about the total positive externality on society. It's about looking on a micro level. What are you doing? So are you being able to provide an income for your family? Are you being able to send your children to school? Are you able to have a slight positive impact on, let's say, the biodiversity of your local community? This is just as successful, in my opinion, and important as an organization as someone who's employing 1,000 people with X% EBITDA. So I think we have to recognize both cases and value them as importantly, because we need 100,000 of those micro entrepreneurs as much as we need maybe 1,000 employing organizations as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It sounds like your message is similar to the previous panel, but there's clearly, for people to join this call today, a lot of budding entrepreneurs in this call, and it sounds like it's just a case of taking a leap in whatever capacity that may be. So I've noticed a couple of questions flooding in already through the Zoom chat. I just wanted to check, Victoria, would I be okay to call on people to unmute themselves and ask the question if they'd want, or do you want me to just read them out?
Yes, of course. Those who would like to ask the questions, please just raise your hand. But I would suggest those who just wrote them in chat, you could read them. It would be easier. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so the first question, Taha, is coming from Sayadi, who says, how can startups leverage followership and reduce failure? So we talked about how we can quantify failure. Is there a way to reduce failure?
Reduce failure. Yeah, I think one can mitigate failure a little bit. First of all, understanding what's at stake. So we say yes, jump, but jump in a how do you say? In a risk-adjusted way, right? Like limit the probability of becoming homeless is a good one. So what we say internally to our organization is we're totally cool failing multiple times a day, but let's try and make sure those failures are not too costly. Right. So, and you can do that, by applying an agile methodology, by working in an iterative way. You can by being lean, one can fail while having a minimum impact either on your organization or you as an individual. So I'd say that's probably one. And then the second is, yeah, definitely, like there's a lot of free material out there. When I started, I think I went through maybe 10, 15 books in the first 2 months when we were starting, because I really didn't know much. And I was like, that was learning about what others had done, best practices, etc. You can really learn a lot from what already has happened. And of course, take it with a pinch of salt, because very few entrepreneurs who write books talk about the real hardships they go through. And it's always super rosy, but it is interesting. And there are lessons to be learned either between the lines or in the books themselves, or YouTube videos, TikTok videos, whatever. We have a lot of content like that on Goodwill. So 100%. Fantastic. I think that ties in really nicely actually to Celia's question, who she was asking about what tips, I guess, you suggest for a young person, young entrepreneur who's just starting from the first step. So they've had the idea, they have got the motivation to start a business. Do you think that the best way to learn is by jumping in, or do you think that maybe a bit of education or mentorship is needed beforehand? So what's the balance, I guess, between the books that you just talked about and just going in and doing the thing? Yeah, I think it changes individual to individual. My encouragement would be to have the courage to just go for it. And again, if the costs of getting in are low, if the costs of failing are low, it's okay to fail. If the costs of failing are high, i.e. you're building a $500 million infrastructure project, probably learn as much as possible beforehand. When it comes to the books I read those books after I'd started. We were trying things while we were going along, right? So the point, I think they go hand in hand. I think you're constantly learning, and hopefully you never stop learning, because you're never going to. I don't feel like I'm ready I don't feel like I'm ready to build X, Y, and Z. I'm learning. I'm constantly trying to improve myself. Literally, I have coaching sessions. I have peer mentors. I have feedback from my team, from our board, from our I don't think I'll ever be ready. And so that's, I think, the same. I don't think anyone's ever ready. You're just doing the most you can, and you try and learn as much, but definitely learning by doing seems to be one of the most effective ways of going about it. But again, it changes person by person. So I don't want to say this is the only way of achieving success. Other friends of mine have done it differently. And there are many other cases of people who take their time. If you're slightly more methodological or analytical, maybe that's the way to do it. But I think there's nothing that says that a 17-year-old cannot build a business. There's no hard and fast line, in the same way that I don't believe, we don't recruit at Goodwill based on a CV or a resume. We don't ask for a minimum amount of, a master's degree from a X, Y, and Z Anglo-Saxon institution. We don't ask for that. I think this is insane, and I don't think it applies for entrepreneurship either.
Fantastic answer, and hopefully that answered your question, Celia, and gave you the inspiration as well. And I'd like to send now to a question from Daphne, who's put in the chat, picking up on what you were saying about it being better to meet people in person, and also we're making the best out of doing it virtually as well. So she said, how can we still make it meaningful, the connections that we make when we're meeting people in an online setting, which still seems to be the most common thing at the moment as the world slowly starts to open up again?
I think it's hard, right? There's unfortunately no silver bullet. If we think even about this conversation, imagine if we were all together in a room next to a fireside, that would be, exponentially more pleasant. But that's just not the case. I think look at the silver lining, which is these calls allow for conversations. I don't know how many countries are represented on this call that would never happen if we were in person, right? So if we were in person, it would be, again, you're in your bubble, you're not able to, it's much harder. I know ITU runs amazing global events, but that's really a small percentage of society. These virtual conversations allow us to really have a much wider breadth, while also, respecting and being slightly, significantly more climate friendly, as well as cost friendly. So I think there's also the advantage on that front. In terms of making it successful, I personally try and come in with an agenda. I try and come in planned, and see what are the outcomes I would like to have from the meeting that I go into. But at the end of the day, maybe the first 2 minutes, a couple of jokes. If you're not funny like me, then just try and make some chit chat before kicking in. That the humanness is important, because a lot of us are spending hours and hours and hours on these. And if you're coming in, especially if you don't know the person and you jump straight in, it's a bit challenging.
Yeah, all really good points. And like you say, so I'm in Beijing at the moment, so 7 hours ahead of most people on this call, and it's something that just wouldn't be possible otherwise. So yeah, I'm just wondering, another question has just come in as well. And it's actually one of the questions that I was going to close with for you. So Asala, you've read my mind. So what resources, Taha, would you recommend to young entrepreneurs to be on top of things, to get new information, to stay abreast of the latest news and latest business developments and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think this is a bit, again, it's what kind of an entrepreneur or what kind of a business are you starting? And it changes significantly depending on where what you're pursuing. So traditionally, you'd say, if you're looking for venture capital backed funding, then you could follow things like Andreessen Horowitz's blog, Y Combinator's blog, and there's a whole bunch of them that exist out there, but TechCrunch, but that's a real risk, because you see that those publications, blogs, etc., really favor a lot of the time a certain model, which is venture-backed funding, and that is not necessarily, and it devalues consciously or subconsciously devalues other forms of entrepreneurship. For example, I come back to the micro-entrepreneurship, and if we look at the micro-entrepreneur, raising 50 million is not really the most important element to success. And sometimes if we read TechCrunch, for example, the only thing that matters is how much you raise, rather than, the only thing. Again, I don't want to devalue that, but I just want to say that's what it's all about. And as a result, a lot of it is about. And as a result, one can think that is success, whereas coming back down to what is success for an organization, that doesn't go across all types of businesses. In which case, Ashoka has content for social entrepreneurs. If you're looking at that, Goodwill has content for youth entrepreneurs. So check us out as well. And we have various challenges that are going on. But I can send over a list. My big feedback is don't just look at the most successful entrepreneurs, because it might not actually be relevant.
One final question for you. I think it would be rude not to, since we've got you on the call. Just generally, I think, are there any pieces of advice that maybe you haven't given so far that maybe you wish you'd been told when you were starting out with Goodwill, and any advice that you'd give other young entrepreneurs right now?
That's a good question. Advice. I think take what people like me say with the big grain of salt. I think at the end, you know, the only person who's responsible for your success is yourself. Yes, you have mentors. Yes, you have supporters. Yes, you have. But at the end, you know, it's very likely you receive both supporters and detractors for some of the right reasons, some of the wrong reasons. At the end of the day, you should have the most information and the most data. So if you believe in something, go for it, you know, fail at it. It's really your journey, and everyone else is hopefully useful to that journey, supportive towards that. But at the end, this is not necessarily a reflection of my own story, because but I think that's really important, because I see a lot of startup pitches and advisors and the others who with very good intention give certain feedback after having heard about an idea for 45 seconds, and based on their own prejudices or what they read in the New York Times in the morning, suddenly say that this is an unviable business, or this is possible and this is not possible. And it's just, there's too much at stake for an individual.
Yeah, there's some really good advice, and I think tallies with a lot of what we've discussed today, that there's 100 different ways to be an entrepreneur, it seems like, and I guess it's for each individual person to work out what's best for them. And I guess I wouldn't underplay the value of your advice today, Taha. It's been an absolute pleasure having you, and it's such an interesting chat, and it's such a shame that we're coming to the end of the session now. Before we finish, I've been told that there's going to be a group photo to sort of preserve this moment. So if as many of you as possible would be willing and able to turn your cameras on, I think Louisa is going to take a group photo for us, and then we can conclude the session.
Louisa, please tell us when you're ready.
Sure. So I'm preparing my screen. I'm going to make a gallery view. Perfect. All right. I see more faces. That's great. All right. So I'll count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Maybe take one more. 1, 2, 3. Thank you, everyone. So the picture was taken. Yes. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Louisa. It's always the sort of sore cheeks, dry eyes, because you don't want to be caught mid-blink. But thank you so much, everybody. It's been wonderful sharing this time with you today, and I hope you all got something useful out of it. And thank you once again, Taha, and see you later.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much, Luke and Taha, for this great session. It was very encouraging. It was very interesting. And I think that lots of us got very motivated and starting to maybe plan already something, generating some ideas. So we reached the midday, and now it's a time for a networking lunch. So I would suggest us to have a 5-minute break, and then come back, and we will do 2 breakout rooms and have an opportunity to know each other better, to talk, to communicate, to network, and to make new friends. So I have on my clock 12:01. I'll see you in 5 minutes, 12:06, and looking forward to it. See you. Hello, everyone. Luisa, do you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you well.
Perfect. So while Luisa is preparing breakout rooms, I'm inviting Celia and Gia, who will lead our breakout rooms, to tell you what we are going to do. So ladies, the floor is yours.
All right, so the breakout rooms are ready, and Celia is in one room, Yang in one room. That's correct. So I will start the meetings, the breakout rooms now. Then.
Yes,
Right.
please.
Yes. So I'm going to open the rooms right now. Hi, Victoria. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Luisa, I can hear you.
So I see that not everyone is joining the breakout rooms, so which makes that the room 2 there are more people connected than the room 1.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's okay for you like that.
How many people is in the room 2?
Okay, so now connected in the room 1 there are like 4 or 5. Oh, now there's more. Let's connecting. And room 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
So it's pretty equal now, no?
No, right now 9 in the room 2, and in room 1, 3 people connecting.
Okay, so maybe would it be possible to transfer it to make it more equal?
I can do that, but now I'm afraid that they're in conversation. Maybe you can join the room 2 and offer them the possibility to change, like coming to the main room, and then I will sign them to the room one. If you want to join, I can just make you in that room.
Yes, please.
Okay, perfect. So how long this is going to last?
We will do it for half an hour, so we could have a little break before we start with the third session.
All right. Then I'm going to move you to room 2 right now. All right.
Thank you. Hi, Luisa.
Hi, Victoria.
Yeah, so actually, there were no volunteers to move.
Okay, they like the breakout room then. Okay.
Okay, let me go back maybe to that. Can you put me in that room where there are not many people?
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
32 years old. My favorite activity is sport tennis.
Great. Yeah. Personally, I'm not really good at playing tennis, but I enjoy playing badminton, which is quite similar for me.
It is similar, yes, it's similar.
Yes.
It's similar sport, but different by rules and playing also.
Yeah. In Kamran, could you go next if you're still here? Okay, got it. And then Ibrahim. Or Dr. Sani Faye. Or
okay, hello.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I was on another call, actually. Apology. I was listening to the introduction part. I'm from Kamran. I've done my master's in economics and informatics. So your questions regarding what do you like in winter the most? Actually, my habit, it is now I like, and as well as my habit actually is reading different stuff, especially books and other things. I do like other some games also, but the most important thing is reading. I like to read a lot.
Yeah, that's very a great activity, and then you can learn more things, and then it's also relaxing sometimes for me when you're reading some novels or something like storybooks or something like that.
Yeah, there are so many new things you learn, and actually you are able to explore your mind, and you are able to think from different perspective about many things, about everything actually. So your session was also very good. I was listening that also, the main section, and hopefully this activity will be also fruitful for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. So if you want, we can have more ice-breaking questions, but as you want, we all want it to be more fruitful. So maybe we can also introduce ourselves, what you're doing and what is your passion. And if you're a part of the project or an organization, you can also briefly explain the mission and then the objective, or like what you want to achieve through this project, and also what role you're having within this project or within this organization. So I think I already explained myself. So
yeah, you have explained. So let me explain about myself. I told you about my education academics. Did my master's in economics, and then informatics. The informatics I did from Sweden, BTH. Right now, I am doing job in a telecom organization. It's an international organization, VEON, in commercial division. So my main role is related to planning and analysis. And it is more because it's a telecom organization. So we have to plan more related to digital things. So traditional telecommunications services are actually waiting. They are no more, they are actually on declining side, and the need for change is required, and the way the modern world is heading. So that's why I've joined this digital session also. So I wanted to learn something new, which actually I might be missing. So I can add in my job also. So this is the area which I think digital growth and how it is going to play an important role in 5 to 10 years, especially from this perspective. So this is a very short about my academic and professional. So I'm actually very open for learning right now from this forum. Any kind of valuable information will be definitely helpful. The most important area will be from government perspective, because I asked the question also in main forum. Actually, I myself deal, I'm in a private organization, but deal a lot with government. So one of the main challenge I have seen, which I've from last few years, is it is quite challenging to transform government, digitally transform, although they say that they are doing a lot, but government has some limitations. In private organization, it's quite easy. But in government, it's a very cumbersome process. So from that perspective, if anyone can add or share their story, how they have done and how they in government area, so that will be something which will be valuable for me. Or if you have any question from my side also, I will try to add value also.
So is there anyone who can answer the Kamran's question?
I think right now, no one is, I think, from government side. It's fine. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, Kamran, what I can do is I can also share my email address, and then if you need more resources from the IT office for Europe, I can, I can share with you. I think that's the thing that I can do. Yeah.
Because ITU is doing a lot, with government. That I have attended some webinars. So most of them I might have missed. So if you can share, definitely I will ask few of my questions. So if you can definitely help me regarding those questions.
Yeah. I totally see your point. Also, digital transformation, digital growth is also creating more impact, not only in the digital society, it's more like also other other parts like environment and also like economic growth, and everything is all linked to the digital growth. So yeah, I really agree that this topic is getting more and more important and also interesting.
And one more area, if no one else is speaking, right now I'm sitting in a city from last few days or weeks, especially on #1 in the most from air quality point of view, which is very alarming and which is not definitely is not good. So I was just thinking today, because we interact with the government, so I was just thinking, other than the initiatives taken by the government, I'm not talking about those initiatives, from digital perspective, from what we can do to reduce this air quality, poor air quality index. Because currently, what the government is doing, which I don't know if my topic is going here and there, but currently what our government is doing is they are making few off days for the organizations to work from home, for government and private. They are turning school days off. Instead of 5 days, they are turning them on for 3 or 4 days. But these are short-term solutions, but I think we need to think something which is more sustainable for long run. So if this is also one of my questions, but from environment point of view, which is very serious concern right now for our city, government, and the whole world also. Actually, it's a big challenge for everyone.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge. Also, like when we consider the COVID and also digital literacy, and also not all the students have the same digital devices or the capacity. So that's what also the ITU is supporting the government to improve the digital, to solve the digital divide within a lot of groups in their population, and like especially between male and also females, and also like young generation and also old generations, and also people with disabilities. So I can also find some informations that the ITU were doing for improving this situation. And and also considering the other things linked to the COVID and also isolation and quarantine, this is very a challenging issue, and definitely we need more efforts in this field.
Yeah, totally agree with you. So anyone else from the forum?
Yeah.
Not sure. I have to say something about this.
I'm sorry, I'm just gonna call people by name. Yosef, can you maybe introduce yourself? Or Susanna?
Oh, yeah, sure. So I'm currently studying my PhD in Yonsei University. So I'm an architect, which like my master, I did it in convergence engineering for future city, and now I'm my PhD. I'm doing it in urban planning and engineering. So the reason why I was very interested in the ITU conferences and all of the resources that we have been given, it's because it might help to my research in general. So I am very open just to listen to other speakers and their passions about digital technology, because to me it's a very relevant topic, especially nowadays that we are talking about a smart city and just how to digitalize every single aspect in it. Yes.
Thank you for your answer. Actually, that's also the field that I'm most interested in. I'm also doing the master in environment, sustainability, and resources. And the reason that I'm joining the ITU is also like how the digital technologies can improve the environmental problems, and also like how to solve or how to help government or the society to mitigate the climate change, and also like adapt to the climate change. So smart cities and the future cities are so interesting, because like there are a lot of frontier technologies that can be deployed to to positively affect on the sustainability of cities. So do you particularly work for the deployment of any frontier technologies in cities, or like infrastructure project?
For my master's, I used to do more about it, which was in more about smart factories and how to make construction smarter, on especially taking track on how to keep the health of the workers in a better condition, using technologies. And then the few projects that I worked in were just basically smart factories and quality control. But I like, hopefully with my PhD nowadays, I think there are more projects on how to I can participate in, more related to the urban planning on smart cities, which would be my goal in long term.
Yeah, that's great. So Susanna and Kamran, in your opinion, do you think the youth generations are getting more engaged in the policy-making process for smart cities, or for improving the digital divide, or like in the digital transformation policies? Do you have any opinion on it, if you want to share?
Well,
Susanna, you first? Yeah.
Okay, yes. I do think that there are more conferences, events that allow youth to at least speak from our research, or from our point of view on how to create new policies for smart cities, or just retrofitting the city. So I think it's up to us, that we are living in a new era of technology, to speak and implement new ways that can help us in the future and the future generations. So yes, I do think we are creating a change, and there are more opportunities for us to speak about it.
Yeah, great. Thank you for your answer. Cameron, if you want to add something more.
I think from our side, yes, youth, they are actually playing their role. I would not say completely yes or no. They are trying their best to heard their voice. But as far as the core policies are concerned, well, as I earlier said, sometimes it is very difficult to convince government to change what they have been doing from last many years. So yes, in some areas we face some challenges, but there are some areas where the voice is being heard and things are being implemented. Especially the participation of the youth is it has very increased comparatively. If we look into the past, it has increased a lot, which is a good sign. But in what I really feel in the policy making also, their voice should be there should be some mechanism should be devised or organizations or whatever the platform where their voice should be registered or should play an important role in policy making. So this is one area which I don't have the answer right now exactly what should be that. Because ITU is a main player, so ITU, the influence of ITU on the government will be very high. But a small organization of youth, I think they will not be able to actually influence a government. So there has to be some platform, good platform, from where the youth can actually convince governments to transform or their change their policies, which is more required today or in the near future.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Sorry about the background noise. I see Youssef, you're also on.
Hello. Yes.
Hello.
Yes,
Could you introduce yourself briefly?
So my name's Youssef Ben Zikri. I'm 32 years old, from Morocco. So.
Oh yeah, you introduced. Sorry.
Yeah. So I'm working at fire company Salcons as a account manager. We are operating on real estate sector. So I have before this I have experiences on offshore sector. So especially energy sector, panel photovoltaic, and with many certification on energy sector and banking also. So this is my my presentation.
So within the sector that you're working on, do you see more engagement from the
youth? Real estate. So we are selling land of villa.
Okay, that's great. So do you do your organization like encourage the engagement of the youth, or do you feel like you the field of the real estate or your organization needs more engagement from youth generation?
Yes, yes, we encourage this before the organization is in countryside. C'est-à-dire 20 kilometers for the city. I live far than city, 20 kilometers. That's why we encourage this the sustainability.
Yes, that's very, yeah, that's very nice. So I want to move on to the next question if you have still some time. So like after the session 2, we met Mr. Tawabawa, who is the CEO. And how do you think young entrepreneurs can be encouraged and supported from your perspective? It can be linked to the field that you're working on. Or also if your organization have or promote any kind of mentorship programs. I think it's a bit different because Yusuf, you're working in a private company, and Susanna, you're doing a PhD program, so maybe it's a bit different. So but if you want to share your opinion on how the young entrepreneurs can be encouraged and supported by the society, if you have any opinion, just let us just share it, please. Thank you. Yeah, I guess it's a hard question to answer. So I would like to also suggest to take a group photo, but I see it's not convenient for you to turn on the camera, so it's also fine. You can also find me on like on LinkedIn, and then you can just send any emails to me if you have any further questions or something. And then if you want to connect with the people who have participated this event, we can also connect you guys. So please write me an email if you are interested in getting in touch with the others. And now that we have about 20 minutes, if you want, if you have any particular issues or any particular topics that you want to know more about how ITU is working on, since it's also lunchtime, so you might also want to have some time to eat something, just let me know, and then I will try to find some document or relevant events or information from the side of ITU, and I can just help you, and I can just share it on the chat. So just feel free to let me know which topic you want to know further, or yeah, what efforts ITU is making. Just let me know. And also feel free to jump in whenever you want to whenever you want to share something or ask some things to me or other people here. Just for your information, I just shared the link on the event that IT Office for Europe is planning to have. We still have 3 other events planned in December. So you can have a look, and then if you're interested in, please register the event. So on the 15th of December, we have the event on digital transformation based on ICT innovations for the development of the digital economy. And also the second one is going to be the approaches of the UN system to support digital transformation. And then the third one will be the e-waste monitoring. It's an event with a close collaboration with UNEP and UNITAR as well. So I guess all these topics were mentioned by you. So this will be very interesting. Oh yeah, Susanna asked me the question that, I studied in Ewha. I'm from South Korea. I studied in Seoul at the Ewha Women's University. So, and I studied political science and international relations, but at the same time, I did an honors program on the social sciences. And when I did my study, I realized that there were a lot of missing also in the politics about the environmental issues or climate change. At least I feel like there was some absence of environment aspects in South Korea. So I studied more about environmental policies, especially international environmental cooperation between countries. And then, first I was really interested in the governance, environmental governance, but then I wanted to be more practical. I wanted to know more about what policies or what solutions we can actually implement in our society. And one of the solutions that I got more interested in was digital technologies, because it's a lot of a lot of private companies, industries, governments, and society are making more efforts to make the society more digitalized. And I think it's the path that all the society will eventually follow. And then I wanted to see how then this development of digital technologies can help to improve our environmental situation and how we can solve the climate crisis that we are facing. So that's what I'm doing now. And then now I'm interested in also the infrastructure, because the infrastructure should come first to deploy or to use the ICTs. So that's why I'm joining the IT Office for Europe and helping the infrastructure policies. And then I did my internship at the European Parliament. It was really a great opportunity for me to understand the European politics better, and how the NGOs and other social actors and then the countries are cooperating together. Not especially just to solve the issues, but then like how they cooperate and then how they compromise some issues that they have differently or they share in common. I don't know, like I really explained it well, but I hope it was interesting.
I think it's really interesting. Like I didn't know that you, like, I was just scrolling through your LinkedIn and I saw that you were from Iwa, because I was just like, yeah, is she or is she not? She's not from South Korea. Because I was like, yeah, she gives me the vibe. But
Okay.
yeah, well, I'm very glad to see that your career path has gone that way. I know that in here, at least, it's the climate change and climate related policies are very, like, not taken too much into consideration yet. But I don't know, like over the past 7 years that I have been living in South Korea, I can see how the progress has been regarding policies. So yeah, like, oh, I'm very, very, very happy to see to see that you are interested in this area.
Yeah,
so you
that's great.
possibly, I don't know if you plan to come back to Korea or not, but I think it, like, people like you would make a great change in the society here.
Thank you. That's, yeah, very touched. It depends. I want to stay. I'm currently based in Geneva. I'm doing my study and also doing the internship. I'm gonna see like how my career path will develop, but I want to definitely stay in this field for the use of digital technologies for climate change action or environmental problems. So for me, it really doesn't matter where I'm based. I'm really open to any country and I can adapt to any culture. So I just want to, as what was his name? The interview we had during the session too, as he mentioned, that I just want to see like how I can create a positive impact in the society, and that will be the definition of success for me as well. Yeah, I also like thought a lot if I have to stay here or if I have to come back to Korea, or where I should apply for my job and everything. And I sometimes feel like, oh, I don't know, I also want to be successful in my life. And I was also thinking like, what is the success in the life? And also what is a failure? And then I came across the phrase saying there is no failure in our lives. So that was the best motivation for me to think more about how then I can contribute to the society. I mean, my life wouldn't be a failure, but then how I can contribute more and how I can create positive impact. And then that will be, I hope my career path is also creating this positive impact, especially for the environment, and also to help a lot of people who are really facing the whole, I don't know how to say it, like, because people who are, who are really facing the crisis, and then the life is changing because of the environmental issues.
I will turn on my camera. Like right now, I am on the office.
Okay,
so,
nice. Thank you.
But just so we can have a face-to-face conversation at least.
Yeah.
So like probably during your intern in ITU, you have probably met people that have become your mentors, or those whose career you think you can follow. In this case, like which kind of encounters have been the one that you think have changed the way that you see like this whole subject of digital transformation, or your own concept of how it has changed after all of these experiences?
Thank you. So first, because I studied political sciences, I didn't really think about the environmental policies before. There was the moment when I was in France for my exchange semester. I met a lot of young students, especially they were more like European students. But I really met a lot of people who really cared about environmental things, like they avoid using plastic bags, or they always thought about their behavior, like how their behaviors are making negative impact in the environment. And that actually really changed my behavior as well. I really didn't really think about this, that like individual behavior really creates like a huge impact in the society. I thought about it, but then I didn't really think about the environmental aspects. So I wanted to study more about the environmental policies, like how the human beings are changing their behaviors, and how the policies are making or leading the society on the right direction. And then I did my research with my professor at IHA. So she was also the one who encouraged me to go abroad to study. And I did a research project with her about how not digital technologies, but the technologies can help the society or help the countries to contribute to environmental cooperation, or to help to mitigate the negative environment impacts, basically. And I really loved it. So that was like, but still I was more into the environmental governance. But then when I saw all the COP negotiations, then I really felt like every country, every actor, they have their own things, they have their own priorities. So then I wanted to know more about the practical solutions that don't really negatively affect their priorities, but then they can create a synergy to solve the issues. And then the digital technologies were kind of the one that can create the synergy for their economic growth, and also create more impact, like the use of IoTs, Internet of Things, for example, that can be deployed within the in the energy sector, for example, and that can also help. And also like in the agriculture sector, there are a lot of use cases that make positive impacts. Sorry, like today I'm a bit like very tired, so
no,
it's
I
really hard to
understand.
explain what
No, but you make a lot of sense. Like I can see how it has just where you come from and where you're at right now.
Yeah,
which is the important thing. And I understand that you're tired, because probably this is taking a lot of your mental capacity.
And also at the European Union, when I was doing my internship at the moment, there was a negotiation and also the discussion on the European Green Deal. So there was also some part that they was also considering the digital technologies to help people who were gonna to support people to find a job, and then to improve the digital literacy, and then how the digital technologies can also be used for the Green Deal project. Also, it's happening in South Korea as well. So because they want to combine the digital technologies and then the green economy all together. So that was also gave me an inspiration that for me to decide what I want to study more and then what I want to do for my career.
Did you take any part of not in the negotiations, of course, but just in the process of it?
No, I was more like an observer, because I was interning at the communication sector, but then I had an opportunity to just sit during the meeting or during the discussion, or when the political parties, when they had meetings or some event or forum inviting other citizens and also stakeholders, then I could also join and then see how they are discussing